What's up, y'all? You're listening to a special edition of the My Aggie Nation podcast. I've gotten a chance to co-host with this guy for what? It's been about 4 years now.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, Travis, we got some big news to share today for our loyal readers at the Eagle.
Some hashtag personal news.
Some hashtag personal news, life update. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this will be my last My Aggie Nation podcast. I am leaving the Eagle. This is my last day. We're shooting this on Friday the 12th. Last day at the Eagle. I've been here for 8 years.
You're old.
I am old, and it's been amazing. I'll start first with this podcast. So when I was hired to come down here with the Eagle, I was walking around a Guitar Center in Dallas, working for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and Shireen Williams, legendary Aggie journalist, gave me a call. She was a coworker at the Star-Telegram at the time, and she said, "Hey, there's maybe this job opening to cover A&M down in College Station. Would you be interested?" And I kind of was like, I was born in Dallas. Lived in Dallas and Fort Worth. I lived in the Metroplex my entire life. I didn't know if I wanted to leave, but it's Shireen Williams, and she said it was a good idea. So I came down here. The job was initially to write for myaggynation.com, a website that we don't manage anymore, but was an idea of that time, do feature writing, and then host a radio show, because there was a radio show on the KZNE down here that we did out of the newsroom here,
which is now a bathroom.
That radio show went away when I came in here, but we still had radio equipment. We still had a good relationship with some of the guys over at Bryan Broadcasting, and so it was Zach Taylor and I, who was the former sports director over at Bryan Broadcasting, who put together the My Aggie Nation podcast. Ironically, I think our first guest actually was Shireen Williams when she was in Rio for the Olympics that year.
Sounds about right.
And then our first in-studio guest was javelin thrower Maggie Malone, now Maggie Malone Harden, I believe.
And she's going back to the Olympics? And she's going back
to the Olympics this year. So that was 2 Olympic cycles ago, 8 years ago. And we have done so many episodes of this podcast since. It's existed only on myaggynation.com. Then we got it onto Apple Play and everything. I think now it's just existing on video form on the website. It's had so many iterations and ideas. I know Zach and I early on, we thought maybe we'd make it a little bit more comedic than journalistic, and we put in a press conference of Noel Mazzoni cracking jokes and put a laugh track to it. We had guest pickers pick games, and one of them we had Reveille pick, and it was just a barking drop that we said, "Oh, well, that of course means you picked Oklahoma." So that was really dumb. But it's been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of cool people we've talked to. I've got to host this with you and Cease and Zach and a lot of different other people. And it's been fun. That's the kind of podcast side of it, but it's been 8 years here. And it's been 8 of the most formative years of my life. I moved to a new city. I learned how to be a for real journalist, lived through a pandemic, met my wife.
Hey, shout out to Lauren.
And just learned a lot that I wouldn't have learned anywhere else. And so it's been a wild ride. I'll go ahead, and I know we're going to get into some stuff people actually want to listen to here in a second, but have to give a shout out to Robert Cessna, who has the ultimate journalistic coaching tree, if you were, with Shireen, Tex Exel and Buchanan, the Houston Chronicles, Brent Zorneman, just a lot of different people who have come out and worked here at the Eagle at one time for Cease, and it's a pleasure to get to work for him and alongside him, doing 10-hour SEC road trips, sharing hotel rooms, telling the same stories and jokes and laughing at them.
Deer legs under the car,
Deer legs under
tree,
He's the
Rusty's.
worst driver on the face of the earth, and somehow we still continue to get in the car.
Sprinter van from Atlanta.
I forgot about that one. Yeah. Yeah, that was a good one too. A lot of really good. Sometime I'll have to write a book just about like working with Robert Cessna. So shout out to Robert Cessna as one of the best. He will. I've said this and I have no qualms about saying it. He is and will be the best boss I'll ever have. It was an absolute pleasure to get to work alongside him, as well as so many former Eagle people: Kelly Brown, Rob Clark, Darren Benson, Robert Primo. Crystal Dupree, former editor, all these people. It was a fun, wild, cool ride, but it was an 8-year ride that saw a lot of crazy stuff
of things happen
in Aggie sports, and that's what we're really here to talk about.
When Travis first got here, let's see, Jim Schlossnagle was still the coach at TCU and was very villainized by Aggies. Things haven't changed apparently. Kevin Sumlin was the football coach at A&M, and Aggie basketball had just come off a Sweet 16 run?
No, so I got here in
Or they were
March.
about to go on their Sweet 16
I got here
run,
in March of 2016.
which was kind of your first big event.
Right. I mean, we went to, like within 2 weeks, I was in Nashville for the SEC basketball tournament, rooming with Rich Kroom, and figuring all that life out, and then Oklahoma City afterwards. That was one of the things I've mentioned as the craziest moments. The UNI game, the Northern Iowa game, A&M comes back from, I know it was 12 down in 30 seconds, but wasn't it like something like 21 in a minute and a half or something like that?
It was a lot.
And just, I mean, the amount of times I wrote something out and then had to delete it, and wrote something out and had to delete it while deadline was pressing like 10 minutes away. It was a wild way to open up my for one of my first bylines in the Eagle, and something that everybody remembers around here in that game. The steals, the turnovers, everything that happened. That was after you and I hit a half-court shot to send Texas packing, because it was supposed to be A&M and Texas in the second round, like the NCAA tournaments tried to do multiple times.
And it never worked.
There's this great picture I used to have as my Twitter banner, me sitting next to Brent Zorneman, and the guy who hit that shot ran over and jumped in front of the scorer's table in front of us, and we're both like, whoa. So, yeah, that was crazy. But, yeah, Trevor Knight was the quarterback football team.
Yeah, that was quite an eventful season. I mean, it looked like A&M was on the cusp of making the college football playoff, and then they clearly were not.
The thing I remember most about that season is the amount of stories I had to write about Trevor Knight and Sadie Robertson's relationship.
Ooh, yes.
Because the dynasty angle of all
blast
of
from
that.
the past.
Yeah.
Remember when he ran for president?
Yeah, all the quarterbacks.
Well, actually, Connor McQueen ran for president.
All the quarterbacks did a presidential candidate type thing.
The Gig 'em ticket.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was crazy. But I mean, the number one we can work off of this, but the number one memory, the craziest probably, had to be LSU 7 overtimes.
Yeah, that one, I think everyone remember. If you're an Aggie or you cover A&M, you remember what that night was like and the pandemonium that was the 7 overtime game. So you were actually on the field. I was in the press box.
Yeah.
I was still a student reporter, but you were on the field.
Right, and that was the story inside. Everyone knows what happens on the field, but the story inside the story is when we cover a game at Kyle Field or really any SEC stadium for the most part, at about 5 to 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter, they hold the elevators for the press to go down to field level, because usually the press conference room is somewhere right off of one of the tunnels down on the field level. So I was down on the field with the last 5 minutes to go, and then realized, oh shoot, this is going to go to overtime. And so there's like no cell signal on the field. I'm trying to text our editors to say like, hey, are we going to push the print time back, or the press is going to be held for this? I don't know. Having trouble getting those text messages through. So I took my laptop up to right up the tunnel where A&M comes out to the left is where our press conference room is. And we can kind of stage from there during the game as well. I took my laptop up there and I was literally running up and down that tunnel. They have TVs in there, but you kind of want to get a feel for the atmosphere.
What shoes were you wearing?
Probably boots.
Yeah,
I was
you
running
probably were
up and down that tunnel to watch as much as I could. And when something big happened, run back up the tunnel and hammer that out on the keyboard, then run back down and watch a few minutes and run back up, and was able to get my story file. We pushed deadline back an hour, I think, and we were able to get it like right in on time. It was wild.
You know what the worst part of that evening was for me?
What
I didn't capture. So I was in the press box. I took a video of the final play when A&M got the 2-point conversion to win. I stopped the recording about what probably would have been maybe 5 seconds before the notorious fight.
I forgot about the fight.
Oh my gosh. Imagine if we spent days trying to figure out what had actually happened. I think Brent got like camera footage from around the stadium to try and
camera,
piece it together.
Yeah.
I mean, that was one of the most ridiculous things that came from that night.
Well, and the other most ridiculous thing is, so at that time, Periscope was still a thing where you would live stream things directly to the Periscope app.
Yep.
And we would do these post-game, me and Robert Sessman would do these post-game Periscopes where we'd kind of break down the game and take questions from readers. And normally we'd get a couple hundred people in there, and people would fire in 5 or 10 questions we'd kind of answer, and that would be it. Well, that time, at Periscope could promote certain streams coming onto the front page, and it was the only time that we ever got our stream promoted to the front page of Periscope, and we had I wanted to say it got up to 30,000 people in the stream getting to experience the comedic delight that is Robert Cessna. It was wild. It was uncontrollable, because then there was so many people in there that you couldn't read what any of the comments were.
They were just
just going. So that was wild as well. That was another memory that I'll remember fondly.
Well, I'm not saying between 2018 and 2022 were uneventful, but then when we got to 2023.
Well,
skip over. I can't skip over COVID. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Was what? So I remember sitting in the parking lot of Willie's Ice House over there on University.
Great chicken wings.
I had reached out to
catfish.
Then athletic director Ross Bjork, and I was like, "Hey, there's these news reports that are kind of coming around that there's this illness started in China. It's kind of making its way to the United States. People are kind of worried about it. What's y'all's take on this?" And he's, at the time, it was hey, we're monitoring it. We're seeing what's going on here. But we're gonna, operations as normal. And no one could have known what was coming next. The A&M's men's basketball team is at the SEC tournament. Game gets canceled before they even take the floor. Baseball season gets canceled, and it's then that I learned how to be a all-around journalist, not just a sports writer, because so much you had to follow, what people would call the news, the non-sports.
Yeah, there was no
news.
Sports.
Well, not only
until there was,
but not only that, you had to, which reminded me of something I didn't even put in my column. That was something that probably deserved to be in there. The CSBI.
Yeah, it was the first sporting event in the entire country.
Sporting event back after everything got shut down was the college baseball summer invitational at Travis Field over there in Little Old Bryan, because Uri, the local Bombers owner, put together a bubbled tournament, and I got to be embedded in the bubble.
You were in the bubble for a week.
For a week, and it was wild. And I think they got a pretty good turnout of streaming. They got put on ESPN. It was a pretty interesting deal, and something that I will never forget. I was glad to be a part of. But you just had to follow so much of what was going on around the world that wasn't sports to be able to report on sports. And it's invaluable when you are covering sports, because sports is such a microcosm of life. It touches it touches the criminal justice system. It touches politics. It touches economics. It touches state government. It so much that you have to be aware of to cover sports well. And I learned a big lesson that year of how to manage all of those spinning plates and turn it into sports coverage. The other thing too that was wild about that was that football season when they did play, you're texting sources the day before the game just to make sure that the team plane took off, because that's when they were testing players right before and making sure that the plane got off.
I guess A&M had one game canceled and then two moved.
Yes.
Yeah, the Tennessee game was moved, and
they didn't play Ole Miss that year.
They didn't play Ole Miss. The Tennessee game was moved, and there was one other that got moved. And I'm blanking on it right now. But the point is, that was a season like no other. Mm-hmm. And it was also the most successful season A&M had while you were here.
And with 10 straight SEC, there wasn't a dull game, 10 straight SEC games.
Oh, yeah.
Even the Vanderbilt game probably should have been dull, but it was a wild ride to start out the season. So,
well, I'm sorry I tried to skip over all of that. Maybe it's just me trying to forget that even happened, like many of us.
Right.
But, well, hey, there was not a dull moment. Your final athletic cycle here on the beat. I mean, every major sport had some pretty significant things that went down.
Yeah, it was, started with a lackluster football season that led to the history-making buyout of Jimbo Fisher. That led to the coaching search. That led to the Mark Stoops era, which, if you haven't, we put a story up of some emails that were sent to Ross Bjork during that. That was just a whole lot of fun to read and go through. Then the Elko hire, that all happened. Plus, the thing that I'll always remember is the Elijah Robinson intern coach, where he had already been hired by Syracuse and on their payroll, but is recruiting for Syracuse, but is also still coaching A&M into the bowl game.
What an interesting dynamic.
Wild. You go into basketball season where expectations were high. They needed to win an NCAA tournament game. They seem like they might not even make the NCAA tournament, and then they get in and make a run through the SEC tournament and ended up winning that game against Nebraska. Turns into a great season. Almost took down a 1 seed in Houston, went into overtime, kept me on, I think I slept in my bed like 8 days in this month of March.
And even less in June.
And even less in June, because you have the best college baseball team the A&M seen in 130 years of fielding a team. And the saddest thing, and this is probably why I don't know if I've said this on here before, the reason why A&M lost in the final of the College World Series was because I had a great lead already pre-written. Like, if they won, I already had the start of my story.
You showed me.
And it was, I went back into the 1904 called the Longhorn, which was the A&M's yearbook at the time. It was the first year they fielded an intercollegiate college team. They had a team in 1894, but then it just played some like local club teams. The first time they played colleges was in 1904. And there was this great line in there talking about, like, it's the first year that A&M fielded a team, but they held themselves up so well that they should be in the conversation of college baseball nationally. Like, A&M is here, they're here to stay in college baseball. And it would have been exactly 120 years later that they might have been the toast of college baseball, winning the College World Series. But it was all for naught, because they ended up losing to Tennessee. Still a great season. The way they were able to overcome Braden Montgomery going down injured, Caden Kent coming in, all of the shots of Jeff Kent on the sideline in the stands.
Did you know he's Caden Kent's dad?
I've heard that.
Did you know Alex Caruso is a ball boy?
That too. Boomer White went to TCU.
No way.
So that was a wild season. We were in Omaha for 2 straight weeks. By day 12, I was like having an existential crisis because I forgot what my bed felt like at home. It was wild.
Your dogs missed you.
I missed my dogs and my wife. You
did good, Lauren.
And then Jim Schlossnagle rides west and takes his coaching staff with him. There's a coaching search after that. There was no comparison to what happened with that Jim Schlossnagle leaving. There's no other instance where a coach coaches in the national championship game, dispels rumors, and the very next day goes and coaches for like the arch rival of that. Like, it's just one of the wildest things that's happened in college.
That might have been the most volatile week in A&M sports.
It was.
I mean, A&M on the cusp of doing something That had not happened.
Yeah,
In a
I think I described it in my
time.
column as a tilt-a-whirl on top of a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It was disorienting to say the least.
Yeah.
So, that whole year was one that I will not forget because it was the wildest. It wasn't always the best. But it also was really good, and it kept me up late nights and on the road a lot. It was crazy. I'll close it off with this, and it's something that you got to be a part of a little bit as well. I think one of the coolest things, I got to cover Super Bowl while I was here in Houston. I got to cover an NFL draft up in Dallas. George H.W. Bush's funeral, when they brought him here on the train, something I'll remember a lot as well. But one of the coolest things actually happened in that span of this year too, and that was that international soccer game at Kyle Field. I'm a big soccer fan. I follow club soccer, the international game, and like you see those games in Miami and in Houston and Dallas and New Jersey at MetLife, but you never think like Vinicius Jr., one of the top soccer players in the world, is gonna get an assist on Kyle Field, where they had to like tear out the field and put in new field, and just for what it was and the magnitude of what it was here in a quote unquote small town in Texas, like that's just one of those really cool things. Probably goes in that same category as the CSBI, even though I forgot to put it in my column, of just like I'm for what it was, getting to cover something here, and the first time they did that, that's one of those things that I might not ever get to cover something like that again. And so that'll always stick out in my mind. It was a blast to get to cover.
Well, Travis, you will be greatly missed. We're excited to hear where you're going next. You won't be going far.
I won't be going. I will say I'm staying on the A&M beat, and I won't be going far. But more to come on that later.
Yeah. So thank you. I know I have learned a lot from you. You've done a lot for me. So I'm very grateful for you and your friendship and your mentorship toward me. I know our readers are thankful for all the great coverage that you've provided. So well done, my friend. And we're looking forward to what's next.
I appreciate it. I'm excited. I'm excited to just see what the next chapter holds. And if you wouldn't mind, can I close it out for one last time? I mean, the My Aggie Nation podcast will continue.
Please.
But for Alex Miller, I'm Travis Brown. This is the My Aggie Nation podcast, and we'll see you soon.